Timur drew on a range of traditions, Islamic as well as Mongolian, to define and justify his rule, to exercise, as one modern author puts it, a cultural ambidexterity of sorts. And whether or not one sees his espousal of jihad as springing from sincere religious conviction, his wars against the unbeliever, and against those he denounced as bad Muslims, produced a greater sensation and had a more powerful impact than the campaigns of any Muslim Mongol ruler before him. Two empires. The world in which Timur was active, well over a century after Genghis Khan's death, had undergone significant political and social changes, of which Islamization was only one of the most conspicuous. The unitary Mongol Empire had long since ceased to be a reality. Genghis Khan had allotted a specific territory and population, or ulus, to use the Mongolian term for such an amalgam, its modern meaning is state, to each of his sons and to other members of his family. But in the course of a civil war between rival candidates for the dignity of Great Khan, Khagan, in the early 1260s, the empire had fragmented, so that the principal uluses formed autonomous states. The western steppes were home to at least two such polities, ruled by the progeny of Genghis Khan's eldest son, Jochi, the foremost being the Kipchak Khanate, frequently designated as the Golden Horde, centered on the Volga and the Crimea. The descendants of the second son, Chagadai, ruled in Transoxiana and Turkestan, corresponding today to most of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, southeastern Kazakhstan and western Xinjiang. The other two principal states both came to be governed by rulers from the line of Genghis Khan's fourth son, Tolui. The Khagan's dominions, the Great Khanate, or the Yuan Empire as it is known, comprised China, Mongolia, Manchuria, and parts of Tibet. The Ilkhanate embraced present-day Iran, part of Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Iraq, Azerbaijan, the Caucasus, and most of Anatolia. By Timur's day, however, the Ilkhanate had dissolved, and its territories had passed into the hands of regional rulers, frequently of Iranian stock, while the Yuan dynasty was expelled from China in 1368 and supplanted by the native Ming. The Chinggisid states had already begun to follow different cultural trajectories. The majority of the nomadic populations of the western Mongol Khanates, unlike the Yuan dominions, were ethnically Turks. And whereas Buddhism predominated under the Yuan, the nomads of Western and Central Asia were steadily Islamized. The Ilkhans had adopted Islam definitively in 1295. In the Jochid territories and the Chagadaid state, the Khans had done so by the 1340s. Although it now seems a trifle inappropriate to regard Timur as inaugurating the second phase of the Mongol Empire, as implicit in the title of a book published almost a century ago, the idea that he was trying to recreate Genghis Khan's empire is still widespread. This, too, is emphatically not beyond question, though it cannot be denied that Timur often acted in such a way as to evoke Genghis Khan's memory. We might be tempted to subscribe to a recent definition of Timur's dominions as, in effect, a neo-Mongol empire. He was of Mongol descent, although his ancestors almost certainly included Turks, and Turkish appears to have been his native language. If he did not follow, strictly speaking, a nomadic lifestyle, the core of his army nevertheless comprised mounted nomad archers, just as had the Mongol forces. The Khans he professed to serve were Chinggisid princes, and Mongol law and custom still played an important part in his governance. The formulation, accordingly, is by no means inapposite, provided we bear in mind two circumstances. First, Timur's world differed geographically and spatially from that of the Mongols. His incessant military operations did not span so vast an area. Though his capture of Delhi represented a triumph that had eluded them, and his troops penetrated as deeply as theirs into Syria and Anatolia, his conquests on other fronts were less impressive. The Mongol Empire has been described as the largest continuous land empire that has so far existed. Timur's domain encompassed only a fraction of that empire, a very large fraction to be sure.